Happy day after Thanksgiving, and if you have some leftover turkey that you're not sure what to do with, and maybe a spare sweet potato, I may have the perfect solution for you here. This is a leftover turkey and sweet potato frittata from Skinnytaste. Now, we haven't tried it yet, but you'll find out along with us whether we liked it or not. So if you'd like to see how this is made, stick around because it's coming up next.
Recipes with Roy, it's time to get lean. Tasty creations, low calorie cuisine. Grab your apron, let's whip up some joy. Weight loss inspiration from recipes with Roy.
Hello friends, and welcome back to my kitchen. And if you are new here, welcome. My name is Roy, and I am here sharing recipes that can help me on a weight loss journey, and hopefully you as well. Now today I am doing a recipe from Skinnytaste. This is going to be for leftover turkey and sweet potato frittata. And it's before Thanksgiving, so I don't have turkey, but I do have chicken, so it's gonna be the same thing. So if you don't have turkey, you don't like turkey, just use chicken. Now I have swapped out a couple of ingredients just to make it a little lighter, but if you wanna stick to her recipe, it's still not gonna be too bad on bites or points or calories. All right, well, enough said, let's go over the ingredients. I have here my cooking spray. That is going to take the place of the 2 teaspoons of olive oil that she uses in her recipe. But if you want to use the olive oil, you go right ahead. Here I have a 12-ounce sweet potato that I have diced into 1/2-inch cubes. That's what she recommends because you're going to cook it for a few minutes on the stovetop, and you want them small enough that they will actually cook through in that time. This will also be going in the oven for a little while, so the oven is preheated to 400 degrees. Here I have 5 eggs and 3 egg whites. Now, why go through the trouble of getting egg whites? Well, that's going to help to make the frittata a little lighter and fluffier, but if you wanted to use just whole eggs, you could just use 7 or 8 eggs. Here I have 6 ounces of chicken breast that has been chopped. And as I said, this is meant for turkey because I wanted to give you something to do with your leftovers. But if you only have chicken, go ahead and use that. Here I have 1 small onion diced, and that is about 1/2 cup. Here I have 1 loose cup of spinach that has been roughly chopped. Now, you can roughly chop it. You don't have to get too small because, as you know, cooking spinach, it's going to wilt down, so it's going to get smaller than it is. Now, what is a loose cup? Well, that's where you just put it in, you pack it gently, but you don't cram it all in there. You just want it loosely packed in there, or you're gonna have a lot more spinach than she recommends. Here I have 1 ounce of fat-free cheddar cheese. Now that's another place where I've made a swap. She uses 1 ounce of Gruyere, but she also says you can omit it totally if you were doing like the Whole30 diet. So you could actually do without any cheese, but I like having a little bit of cheese in there, so I use the fat-free cheddar instead. Here I have 1/2 teaspoon of dried thyme. In the recipe, it says 1 teaspoon of fresh thyme or 1/2 teaspoon of dried thyme. If you're ever looking at a recipe and it says to use a fresh herb that you don't have, you just use half as much of the dried version. That way you don't have to go out and get fresh herbs and then have half of it rotting in your fridge, which is usually what happens to me. Here I have 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, and some cracked pepper. And I just ground that fresh, but if you only have the stuff in the jar, don't worry about it. Now, as far as the kosher salt, if you don't have kosher salt, what you would do is use half as much of table salt because the crystals of kosher salt are larger. That takes up more volume. So if you're using table salt, which is much finer, you want to use half as much. All right, so those are all of the ingredients. So let me shuffle a few things around and we'll get started. So the first thing she has you do is to combine the eggs with some cheese, a little bit of the salt. In the recipe, it doesn't list the kosher salt as divided, which is typical if you're using it in 2 different parts. So just be aware you are going to use 1/4 teaspoon with the eggs, and then the other 3/4 of a teaspoon will go in with the other ingredients. But I have a small mixing bowl here. She, for some reason, says a large bowl, but you're only mixing the eggs. You're not adding anything else to it. So I like to mix mine in here because it's got a pour spout. So I'm going to add in the whole eggs, egg whites, 1/4 teaspoon of the kosher salt, pinch of black pepper, and then whisk this all together. You want this to become combined before we add in the cheese. You don't want to have to try to get the cheese mixed in while you're still trying to break up the yolks. So just get this mixed into a homogeneous mixture. So now what I'm going to do is just add in the cheese and whisk that together. Okay, now this I'm going to set aside for now. Now we're going to start cooking the vegetables and things on the stovetop before we put them into the oven. So we're going to start, of course, with the cooking spray, or if you're using the oil, you go ahead and use that. I'm using some cooking spray. And then to that, we're going to add in the onions, thyme, garlic powder, paprika, remaining salt, and black pepper. And we're cooking this over medium heat. And I'm just going to stir that to get all of that combined. Now, the reason that you want to add your spices and herbs in now is because the heat is going to help the spices bloom so that they are more fragrant and more flavorful. And we're going to cook this for about 5 minutes until they are soft and slightly golden. So 5 minutes, I'll be back. All right, so it's been about 5 minutes and the onions are softened. Now I did look back at the recipe and apparently I wasn't supposed to add the seasonings until I add in the sweet potatoes, which is the next step. But I still stand by it. Usually I add my seasonings in with the onions, the first thing that goes in. So either way is gonna be fine. But to this, we're going to add in sweet potatoes and just stir those around to coat them with the herbs and spices that are in here. Now we're going to cover these and we're going to cook them on medium low. At least that's her recommendation. I'm going to keep it on medium just because when I cook on medium low, it doesn't seem to have as much power as I'd like. So I'm going to keep it more towards medium. But you can go with medium low if you want. But we're going to cook this for about 12 minutes, stirring on occasion, because we want those sweet potatoes to become crispy and tender according to her recipe. So 12 minutes, I'll be back. All right, so it's been 12 minutes and you can see that they have cooked. They're not really crispy, but they are tender because I can put a fork right in and it doesn't give me any resistance. Now, one thing I did want to mention is you want to make sure that you do cover this because that's going to allow the steam to help cook the sweet potatoes. And usually what I do when I stir them is when I lift it, I try to pull it up over the pan so that way any condensation will just go right back into the pan and not get wasted. All right, so now to this, we're going to add in our turkey breast, or in my case, chicken breast, and just stir that through. And then add in the spinach, and we're just going to let this spinach wilt, which will take about 2 to 3 minutes. All right, so it's been about 3 minutes, and the spinach has wilted a little bit. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add in our eggs. Just get all of that in there. And then I'm going to stir everything together. And she says to reduce the heat to low, but since my stovetop does run a little cooler at times when you get to the lower temperatures, I'm actually going to just bring it down to medium low. So now we just let this sit for 6 to 8 minutes until the edges are set, and then we'll put it into the oven. Now this is very similar to my diner style omelet, my fluffy diner style omelet, where you will let it sit on the stovetop to set slightly before putting it into the oven. And if you haven't seen that, I will card that here and also link to it down below in the description box. If you're looking for an omelet, a nice fluffy omelet, that's the one for you. All right, so let me get the edges set and I'll be back. All right, so it's been 6 minutes and you can see the edges are starting to set. You don't have to have them fully set. You just want to make sure that they're starting to hold their structure. And now we're going to put this into the oven, a 400-degree oven, for 8 to 10 minutes. And then it'll come out, it'll be done, and it'll be I hope, delicious. So I'll be back. Okay, there we have it. Looks delicious, smells great. And you want to cook it until it's fully set. You don't want any liquid eggs still left behind. Now, I'm going to take my pot holder here and cover the handle just because I want to make sure everybody knows that this is hot. I don't want anyone to touch it and get burned. Now, I did fail to mention that your skillet should be a 10-inch skillet and it should be oven safe, obviously, because we're going to be transferring it from the stovetop to the oven. But this looks amazing and I'm hoping we enjoy it. I'm going to let you know right here whether we liked it or not. This is going to make 6 servings, or if you're like me, it could make 4 servings, and it still wouldn't be bad on bites, points, calories. Now, so I don't cut my pan, I do have my spatula here, a firm spatula, because I'm going to cut it using the spatula rather than using a knife and scoring the pan. As I said, I'm going to do mine in 4, but that is not her recipe. Her recipe is for 6. And I also have my silicone spatula because sometimes it's a little hard to get that first one out. So this will help to get underneath that edge there. All right, so for the bites and points, for 1 serving, if you're doing it as 6, it's going to be 1 better balanced bite. But if you are on WW, because sweet potatoes are now a 0-point food, this would be 0 for 1 section. Now, if you do it as I will probably do it and cut it into 4, on the Better Balance plan, it will go up to 2 bites, still not bad. On WW, I'm not sure if it would remain 0 or if it would go up to 1, but still not bad. Now, if you're following calories, the calories for 1/6 of this frittata would be 155. And if you're following macros, the fat is 4.7 grams, saturated fat is 1.5 grams, protein is 18.7 grams, carbs are 9 grams, fiber is 2 grams, and sugars are 2.7 grams for 1/6 of this frittata. And it will go up by about half on the calories and macros if you decide to do it as 4 as I did. So I hope you're gonna give this a try, whether we enjoyed it or not. You may. So I will link directly to Skinnytaste's recipe down in the description box. Also down in the description box are links to my recipe blog if you're looking for any of my recipes. There's a link to the cookbook, there's a link to my stores, there's a link to my Amazon storefront. There's also a link to my social media if you want to follow me over there. And don't forget to give me a like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit that notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. Next week, we're going to be going into the Christmassy type of recipes, and I'm going to be starting you off with something that someone requested quite a while ago, and it took me this long to perfect it. It's for a fudge. So if you want some fudge for the holidays, you're gonna wanna see that one. So hit that notification bell. All right, I'm gonna get this served up for our lunch and hopefully enjoy a delicious meal. So until next time, bye.